Okay, looks like we're on the air. Welcome to Mr. Colicchio, CJ Colicchio, 6'6", 200 pounds, for all you that watch that idiotic video. Welcome to the very first Google Hangout, and hopefully not the last one that we do. I really hope that we can make more of this as we continue to work through the school year. I hope that we had a little bit of a drawback. Hold on a second.
Welcome to Mr. Colicchio, CJ Colicchio.
And I think we're back. Okay, good, sweet. Sorry about that, a little weird. Let me go get the study guide sheet. I'll let a lot of you follow in, and hopefully by 7:40 we'll get some more people. You guys can go ahead and start submitting questions. If any of you have a Google Plus account, feel free to add me to your circles, and that way you can live stream this and ask questions. If not, I will have the YouTube page open and I will be able to see your questions, okay? So leave them in the comments below, okay? If not, email me. Website's on the, or email's on the website, or you can just tweet at me at Mr._Colicchio, which should be below me right now, but it's not. So 1 second. Hold on. Let's get that all figured out. Give me like 2 seconds to do that. Ask. All right. Let's see if that'll work. Hey, there it is. All right, we'll be right back. All right, and we are back. So we have 21 people in the viewing room right now. That's awesome. That's about an average size tutoring session if you've ever been to one. But let's wait for a little more people to get into the viewing room. I'll see if I have any questions asked right now. Jamie, if you're watching this, stop trolling or I'm gonna boot you from the station. That's a warning. All right, let's see, any emails, check the junk mail. Nope, nothing from junk mail. Looks like we have one question already sent, so we'll get started with that in about 5 minutes. So remember, if you have a question, you can definitely email me or send it to this thing down below, okay? Everything will be open. So let's go ahead and keep going. One thing, guys, I want you guys to make sure, especially, is to go to bed at a good time tonight. I don't want you guys to think that you should be staying up late at all. Definitely don't do that. That's a terrible idea. Go right to bed after this and get a good night's sleep. Eat some breakfast tomorrow. You know, that's an important meal of the day. So yeah, do that for sure. Don't see any comments thus far, but let's hope that we can maybe get some. Let's see if I can find any. We'll go 2 more minutes and then we'll start asking questions or answer the questions that have been asked already. Let's see. Doesn't look like anything yet. Okay, we have our first question, so let's get to that. We have our first question, so we're gonna go ahead and get down there. All right, the first thing that we're gonna talk about is asked for the three types of inflation. So the first type is called cost push inflation. Cost push inflation is quite simply whenever the cost of producing something go up, whether that's minimal wage or natural resources. So let's say that you're building, wooden desks or something, and obviously wood comes from timber, and obviously timber is wood. And let's say that there's a huge fire and there's a bunch of wood that gets burned. You can't use it for chairs and desks. So the price of that good goes up. Well, that's going to go up the supply line. So in a second, let me see if I can get a graph to show you what that looks like. Get you a picture of cost push inflation. While I'm looking for that, the second thing is called demand pull inflation. Okay, demand pull is pretty easy to understand because cost push being all about supply. Demand pull is obviously about demand. Okay, so hold on, let's share my screen real quickly. That's not what I want. I want screen share. Okay, let's see. Present to everyone, that's what I want. Okay, so as you guys can see on my screen, we have the supply line. Here's the first one, aggregate supply. Follow my line. So this is when before the fire happened and before our profitable desk company was producing desks at a good rate. Then all of a sudden there was a giant wildfire, and all of a sudden, boom, cost push inflation happens because of this lack of resources. And unfortunately for people of our company, we're also going to be raising our prices as well as not selling as much. The quantity supplied is not as much. So cost push inflation is not really good at all. Now, on the contrary, I'm gonna stop that for a second. Let's see, wait for that to go back, and hey, I'm back. Let's go to demand pull. Finding demand pull, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again. There it is. And viola. Okay, so as you can tell by demand pull inflation, this is when an item gets popular. So our first line, okay, we're talking about demand. So we have our supply line right here, and now we have the original demand. And let's say, Apple iPhone watches. Okay, the iPhone watch is going to be a super popular item when it comes out. So the price of it's going to go up because more people are going to buy it. The more that people buy it, the more that there's going to be an increase of people purchasing it. So that's why you can see the price not only going up, but quantity going up as well. Okay, we're going to stop that. And I will come back in a second. 3, 2, 1. There I am. And then finally, we're going to look at quantity theory inflation. Quantity theory inflation is probably the easiest to understand because quantity theory is basically pumping money into the economy, but not having enough gold to back it up. And we saw that, for instance, with Germany in the 1920s. They thought that it would be a brilliant idea to just keep pumping money into the economy, and that, of course, didn't work at all. What happens is the more money you print, the less money that you have, the more money you print, obviously the more money you have, but the less value that it is, and the prices of goods are going to go up. Okay, I could show you this, but I don't want to confuse you guys at all with the money supply at all. All right, so we're going to get away from that. I'm going to find my next question to answer, and that looks like it is. Hi, Kamari. I see your comment. 3 tools of monetary policy. So, monetary policy. This is the Fed. Okay, the Fed controls monetary policy. It controls the supply of money. It regulates the banks. We all know that that's like a job for them to do. What we need to make sure that we understand is what what those tools are. The tools themselves are the reserve requirements, which it's how much money that the banks have to keep in like their vault. I put that in quotation marks because it's not like a vault that says reserve requirements. It's just how much money they have to keep at the banks and they can't loan out. Okay, the more that's in a reserve requirement, the less that can be given out to people. So more money, if they raise reserve requirements, that means that they're requiring more money to be in the banks, and therefore less money can be loaned out for people to spend. We would generally raise the requirement when we wanted to do contractionary monetary policy. Okay, we don't want to be expanding too much or we hit our peak. And obviously the opposite for expansionary, we would lower the reserve requirements, giving more money to people. Okay, hopefully you guys are like writing this down because this is super complicated in itself, and I want to make sure that you guys are at least writing this down. Okay, the second thing, let's talk about the discount rate. Discount rate is simple. Discount rate is just, think of like a credit card. Okay, it's like a bank's credit card from the Fed. The more the interest rate is, the higher the interest rate, the less people are going to want to spend. Like if you have a high interest rate credit card, you're not going to go and use it that much because you're scared of paying that much interest. But if it's a lower interest rate, you're going to go off and spend more. So if it's a high interest discount rate, then it's contractionary monetary policy. If it's a lower discount rate, then the banks are going to be lending more money to people because they would have less money to pay the Fed back. Now, if we look at the third, which is open market operations, and that's simple because it's just the buying or selling of bonds. The federal government doesn't buy bonds or sell them. It's the Fed. The Fed, and remember, the Federal Reserve is not the same as the federal government. It's an independent agency, just kind of like NASA. They buy bonds. Bonds are those contracts that you get with the government that say if you wait a certain amount of years, you can increase the value of how much you're paying. And that's really important because people are going to want to spend that kind of money later. They'll wait. You buy them when they're, somebody's an infant or something, and then by the time they get to college, boom, they've got a couple $1,000s sitting in a bond that they can turn in. So if the Fed is buying bonds, then they're trying to get money to go into the economy. So that's expansionary monetary policy. If they are selling bonds, they are saying, here's a piece of paper that you're going to turn into money in 20 years. You give me your money, I give you the bond, I take your money and I shred it to get out of circulation. Okay, so those are the three tools of monetary policy. Let us look at another question. Hello, Hannah. Hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is like quantity theory, except it's really actually the biggest. It's a very large example of it. Hyperinflation is like if you just keep pumping money into the problem, and bread starts to cost like $23 billion for a loaf. It still was like $1 value, like worth like $1 US, but it's just that it's like the wheelbarrow's full of money. They printed so much money that they thought that they would solve the problem. It just didn't. Okay, let's look at another question. We are just cranking out all of the merger questions. Okay, so let's talk about that. I know that mergers we didn't talk about. We talked about like after a quiz, like on a Friday in the computer lab, so I'm sure none of you were like paying attention. But for those of you that were, let's look at the types of mergers and conglomerates for that, right? So conglomerates are just two corporations coming together. We generally find them in like a monopolistic competition and they merge, or in an oligopoly. The problem with conglomerates is that some companies shouldn't merge because if they did, then they would become a monopoly. And we all know that monopolies are illegal unless, of course, they are owned by the government slightly, and that's called a natural monopoly, like Duke Energy or the water company. We're selling goods at a low rate, the lowest rate possible, because they're not trying to profit off them. But if it's a monopoly, they would obviously set the prices stupidly high. So let's look at types of mergers, because those are the biggest thing. Okay. Getting a lot of questions. This is good. I like to see this. Okay. So, let's go to horizontal. Let's do horizontal first. Horizontal. Okay, so the two main mergers that you need to worry about is a horizontal merger and a vertical merger. Has nothing to do with directions. It just has to do with the direct competition that they're in. So horizontal mergers, for instance. Horizontal mergers are two companies that are in direct competition with each other and share similar products and markets. So Coke and Pepsi if they decided to make Coke, a delicious soft drink, then they would have a horizontal merger. Now, I know in class, I'm pretty sure I said that was that a vertical merger created monopolies, and I must have still been suffering from a lack of sleep because that's absolutely wrong. Monopolies are formed by horizontal mergers, and these are the ones that the federal government is usually going to break up because they don't want companies to have, that are in direct competition to merge together, because as you probably understand, when companies merge together like that, they're going to create some giant conglomerate and possibly a monopoly that'll run other businesses out of business. Now, on the opposite, we have a vertical merger, and these are two companies that make completely different objects but make sense to come together, like an ice cream cone maker and an ice cream maker. Obviously, ice cream cone, two different things, but go together. These make up, trusts, okay? So I'm sorry that I said that in class differently. That's my fault. Horizontal mergers make monopolies. Say that again. Horizontal mergers make monopolies, okay? All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at another question. Let me go back to Google and see what I can get. Hi, Monaco. I saw your question about the discount rate. Hopefully you understood that. The discount rate is about, obviously what we talked about before. It's monetary policy. It's the rate that the Fed charges banks in interest, okay? Let's go ahead and look at more questions. I think I see two tools of fiscal policy. Well, we talked about monetary, so let us do fiscal policy. So who runs fiscal policy? I hope you all just said federal government, not the Federal Reserve, because that's monetary policy. So kudos to you. Give yourselves a little pat on the back. Now, the whole thing with fiscal policy is the government's way of controlling the money supply. But they do it a little bit differently. So instead of 3 tools like monetary policy, they only do 2. And those 2 are taxes and government spending. And they go in opposite directions. So when taxes go up, government spending goes down. When taxes go down, government spending goes up. Now, they also can not change. Maybe we raise taxes, but we keep government spending the same. Maybe we decrease government spending, we keep taxes the same. It's not like an all meets all sort of thing. It's just suggested that they go in different directions. We're never going to raise taxes and raise government spending. That's not something we would do to fix the economy, okay? So for instance, if you need to tie to one another, think of it this way. Loose fiscal policy. This is called, it's basically expansionary fiscal policy, but we'll call it loose so that you don't, what's the word I'm looking for? Lose it or something, okay? You don't want to misplace the word. Now, here's the thing, okay? If we are doing loose fiscal policy, think of a tube, okay? And through the tube, money is flowing, okay? The government's going to try to pump money through increasing government spending and lowering taxes. If you lower taxes, people are going to spend more. I try to think about how much money I could spend if I didn't have taxes, but then again, I'm a teacher, so that's just low and pathetic. But for people who make real money doing real jobs, you have money to spend. Now, on the flip side, you're going to have an increase of taxes and lower government spending. That is tight fiscal policy. Think about all of you athletes out there. You run, you do physical activities, you lift, your arm, your muscles, your leg muscles, they get tight and you can't do much. You're restricted to move, and that's sort of like the economy. Tight fiscal policy, more taxes. It's like all this, taxes are just pounding and piling up on you and you can't do anything about it, okay? So you have loose fiscal policy and tight fiscal policy. Loose fiscal policy, lower taxes, increase government spending, that creates a deficit, okay? You're spending more than you're bringing in. That's debt. Tight fiscal policy, you're raising taxes, bringing money in, less government spending, you're not spending as much, so you're making a surplus, okay? So let us see what the next question is. It looks like we have more people sharing videos. All right. All right, we did that. What's good, Mr. C? Yeah, what's up? What's good? Trap Lord, hashtag Young Money. I have a bad feeling that's you, Mr. Carlin. So let's look at barriers to trade. Okay, so barriers to trade. There are 4. Okay, there's a tariff, a quota, and then we have sanctions and embargoes. So tariff, sanctions, embargo, quota. I would try to come up with some like crazy acronym that you can remember that, but like TESQ it's not sexy enough to come up with an acronym. But if you can do it, then definitely do it. But let's go through them. Number 1 is tariff. Probably the easiest one. It starts with a T. You know, it all starts with a T, a tax, and that's all it is. It's a tax on any imported good. So let's take, you know, I don't know, sweet tea. We like that down here in North Carolina. So let's say that, you know, you go to your American store, they're selling sweet tea for $1 per, you know, liter or something. And let's say that the British come in and they're selling their tea, same exact tea, and it's also $1. Well, that's not really fair. So it's imported, it's not even from here. So what does the government do? It says, well, they're from England, so they get another $1 tariff. So instead of the liter being $1, it's $2. Then there's a quota. A quota is the limitation on the amount of something that can be brought in. So one limitation would be like how much you can bring in. So let's say that we can only bring in, you know, 10,000 gallons of sweet tea from England. If the government restricted that, that would be a quota because they're limiting it, okay? We have put quotas on people. We have put quotas on goods and services. It's just something we do. We can't bring everything in here or we're not gonna be able to promote domestic goods. Next is a sanction, and I always compare a sanction to like getting suspended from school. When you do something bad, you're gonna get reprimanded for it. Think about it in school, you do something bad, you like hit somebody, you call them names, you bully them, you're gonna get suspended. You're not gonna get expelled, but you're gonna get punished. And what's gonna happen is when you get punished, you're not able to do everything. And so in this case, sanctions like getting suspended, you can't be traded with. We don't put sanctions on people from other countries. This is something more that the UN does. This is something more that NATO would do. They would put sanctions on people. What we do is called an embargo, and that's the next barrier to trade. An embargo is actually restricting trade permanently. That's something we have with Cuba. That's something we have with North Korea. Might be something in the next couple of years that we see we get rid of from Cuba because, you know, it's kind of pointless now that, you know, Castro's not a person or not a person in power anymore. He's still alive somehow. You know, the dynamite cigar didn't work. Oh, hi, Alex Woodruff. Hi. I know that you're sad, but I see your comment now. Hi, everybody else. If you leave me a comment, I will say hi to you. I'm sorry that I can't keep up with your all your comments. I'm doing the best I can. Let's see, any other questions? Okay, so I had one from Miss Morgan Dunlap. And Morgan, I see that they were talking about one of your friends in Mr. Simpson's class saying that fiscal and monetary policy in peaks and troughs says that during a peak, inflation is low. And you always thought that during inflation is high. Basically, inflation is, when we're looking at the business cycle, and let me pull up a picture of the business cycle so that we can really break this down. I don't want you guys to be confused. Business cycle. Slowly getting there. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, present to everyone. All right, here we go. So I know this isn't like the full steps that we've talked about, but here's the peak, here's the recession, here's the trough, here's the expansion. Excuse the words recovery and slump and boom. I know you guys are smart enough to, get over that. So when we are in a recession, so we're going down, unemployment is going up. People are not having jobs. Real GDP is going down, okay? Real GDP is going down for at least 6 months. Unemployment is going down. Everything is bad. So what we want to do is we want to have some sort of expansionary policy or loose policy to bring it up. That happens in 2 ways: monetary policy, fiscal policy. The Fed will either lower the reserve requirements, they will lower the discount rate, or they will buy bonds so that we hit our trough and go all the way back up. The federal government will either lower taxes or they will increase government spending to create jobs, to lower that unemployment rate, and then finally go back up. Okay, so now that we're at a recovery, okay, this is our expansion. This is when inflation starts to go up. And now the whole point of this is inflation's going up because we're spending more money. Okay, the more that you spend money, the more people have jobs, inflation's going to go up. And we talk about this in class, especially today. We don't want to exponentially grow our expansion or our recovery, because the big point is if we do that, we're going to hit the boom, and we don't want to hit the boom. That would be bad because that means we're going down. We don't want to hit that peak. We're going to go down. So we want to gradually grow so that we're not only fighting inflation, but so that our real GDP can go up. When we're in our recovery, real GDP is going to go up, inflation's going to go up, but unemployment should be going down. Okay, so I hope that that kind of brings a little bit of clarity to your minds on that. So Morgan, I hope that helped. Let's check Twitter. I haven't even looked at Twitter. I'm sure there's a lot of people asking questions on Twitter. Oh, that's not the right one. How's everyone doing tonight? It's still light out. Isn't that crazy? I think it is. Where can I log out? Come on. Come on now. Twitter's asking me to see cute animals. It's like it knows me. All right. Mr. _Colicchio. There we are. All right. Let's see. Anything on Twitter? Notifications say yes. Okay. I think we've already looked at deficit. All right, Maddie, absolute and comparative advantage. Great question. I will answer that right now. Let me go ahead and get a chart of absolute and comparative advantage. That looked at real quick. So for those of you who don't know, this is dealing with trade. I've got a good one right here. Let's see if this will work. View image. Okay. Let's see if I can share the screen again. That way we can. All right, here we go. Present to everyone. All right, so as you can see, comparative advantage. A comparative advantage is when you have a lower opportunity cost than of producing an item, or it takes a shorter amount of time for you to produce something. Sorry, not shorter amount of time, but you give up less. It's an opportunity cost. Remember, opportunity cost is something that you choose to do over something else. Like right now, I'm wearing a black shirt. I could have wore a blue shirt. I just felt that the black shirt was more beneficial. So my opportunity cost is me wearing the blue shirt. So let's look at these two countries, okay? Country A and country B. As you can see, one of them, country A, has the absolute advantage. Now, we haven't talked about that, but an absolute advantage, ladies and gentlemen, is simply having the ability to do more than one country, okay? Let's compare the two, okay? let's look at country A, which produces 6 of something, of 6 units of food per day. And then it also produces 3 units of food per day. So it has the absolute advantage because it makes more. Look at 6 is greater than 1, 3 is greater than 2. They create more, therefore they have the absolute advantage. Country B, though, let's look at them to see if they have the comparative advantage. So if we're looking at food, okay, country A gives up 3 clothing to make 6 food. Okay, so they're not giving up too much. They're only giving up 3 to make 6. That's pretty good. Okay, but let's look at let's look at country B's food. They give up 2 to make 1. So let's look at their rate. Country A's rate, comparative rate, is 2 versus 0.5. Which one's bigger? 2. So country A has the comparative advantage in food. Let's look at the comparative advantage with clothing. To make 3 units of clothing, country A has to give up 6 food. So do the division, 3 divided by 6 is 0.5. If we look at clothing, country B only has to give up 1 unit of food to make 2 clothing. So do the division, 2 divided by 1 is 1. Look at that, country B has a comparative advantage to making clothing. Why? Because you divide 2 divided by 1, you divide 3 divided by 6, and you see which one is bigger. Okay, so absolute advantage, who makes more? Country A makes more. Country A has 6 food compared to 1, has 3 clothing units compared to 2. Comparatively, though, if we look at it, they have the advantage country A doesn't have in food because they only give up 3 as opposed to them giving up 2 to 1. But in comparative advantage for clothing, country B has that, okay? All right, I think we got that. I think so. Sweet. All right, let us look at another question. Twitter notifications. Twitter says nothing except Jordan Wyrick followed you. Hi, Jordan Wyrick. Thank you for following me. You all can follow me, below here. That's cool if you want to. Subscribe to me on YouTube because, that'd be very nice if you did that too. Let's see. Let's go back to the comment box. Oh, we have another comment. Okay, Hannah, hello. Let me go ahead and answer your question about the difference between collusion and a cartel. That is a great question. First of all, to know what we're talking about, you need to talk. You have to know what we're talking about, and that's a market structure known as an oligopoly. For any of you in my 6th period, that is the crazy video that we saw with the guy doing the Gangnam style to the word oligopoly. Absolutely brilliant. I might have to share that just so that you guys can watch it. I think what you need to know for collusion is when collusion is bad. First of all, collusion is bad. Collusion is like when you're secretly talking with the enemy. Okay, and in this case, collusion. Let's use Time Warner Cable or Verizon. Let's use Verizon. Let's use the cellular networks. So Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile are the 4 major cell phone dealers. And so what they do is, let's say that Verizon is going to collude with AT&T, and they're going to drive their prices down to put Sprint out of business. They're going to secretly talk about lowering prices so that they, push somebody else out. That's pretty much what we don't want, because as consumers, if we are somebody who's in, Sprint, we're gonna get, we're kind of getting screwed up by that because of the fact that they're charging so much less for this one product that's similar. Obviously we all know that Sprint comparison to Verizon isn't the same because Sprint is so much worse. But if they drive the prices down of Verizon, that's going to put Sprint out of business, and unfairly. It's not fair to them. A cartel, sort of the same thing. If we're talking cartel, we're still talking oligopoly. You just need to know that a cartel for oligopoly, just think about oligopoly markets. You have high barriers to entry. You have a few different firms. You don't, they make the price decisions. When in terms of cartels, we need to think of OPEC. And OPEC is the oil and petroleum exporting countries. OPEC countries are like Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, UAE, countries that have high oil. And what they are going to do is they basically control the entire market of oil. So, hey, gas is going up right now. It's like, I just paid $2.54, and yet I paid like $2.30 a couple weeks ago. So gas is going up. So instead of saying hashtag thanks Obama, you should say hashtag thanks OPEC. We can get that trending, right? We can get hashtag thanks OPEC trending. Start a revolution. Let's do it. Okay, so that's all you really need to know for collusion and cartels. Let's go ahead and look at the email list. Let's see, anything? Bueller, nothing in that email. Let's go to the other email account. Let's go to the Gmail account. Oh, there we go. That's a thing. Okay, I just got a email from Elizabeth Rabando. Hi, Elizabeth. You don't have to do all caps. It sounds like you're yelling. Just go all down. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about types of taxes. That's a good one. So great question. Let's talk about it. First thing about taxes. These are fiscal policy. This is something that the government's going to do. And if you have been watching this video, you should know that fiscal policy means that we're going to have the government controlling the money supply. If they are increasing taxes, it is due to the fact that we are trying to contract the economy. We want people to spend less. More taxes meaning people spend less. Tight. Remember, tight fiscal policy. Okay, types of taxes. Number one, let's do property tax. That was easy. Property. We're talking about people's houses, their cars, their land. That's property tax. You own your house, you own your car. I have to pay property tax on my car, which is ludicrous because that's just a state thing. That's not the federal government, that's just a state government. Let's talk about the next one. Let's talk about estate tax, because who doesn't like talking about dead people? That was a little weird. I feel a little weird saying that. Estate is like if you were, your grandparents die or something, or your parents died, they leave you money, they leave you your house, they leave you your car. If they leave you something, that's their estate. And on their estate, that actually gets taxed. Like if your parents leave you like $1 million, it's like, oh, sweet, I'm a millionaire now. Government goes, hey, hold on a second. We need to tax that. And now you only walk away with like $800,000. Ugh, what a rough life. The next thing, income tax. This is just something that we all pay paycheck to paycheck. It's something that we have to pay that is taken out of our paycheck. It happens. Government's going to take some money from us. What's next? Ooh, excise tax. So an excise tax, we're talking things that we put into our body that we should not, or something that we do that we should not. Cigarettes, alcohol, marijuana if you're in Colorado, Washington, or Oregon. What else? Oh, gambling. You shouldn't gamble. It's just, people get addicted to that. But there's a tax on gambling. So if you go to like a casino and you just like high roller, baby, 21. I don't know why I rolled dice and said 21. That's like two different. I don't gamble, clearly. Don't get out much. But if you win big at the casino, that itself, ladies and gentlemen, is going to get taxed with an excise tax. Okay, and those excise taxes change by state. A $3.50 pack of cigarettes here is like $10 in New York. That's why nobody smokes in New York, and that's why it's kind of disgusting that everybody smokes down here. It's cheaper to smoke down here, I guess. So those are the main taxes you should really know. I don't think that you need to know anymore. Ooh, Hello, Miss Brianna Best. Let me go over government regulation and what it is and the consumer price index. That's a great question. Let me go over that. So consumer price index, we'll start with that. That basically measures inflation. We want to see how much money we're spending and the average price of goods. So what we're going to see is we're going to look over the course of a year, and we're going to see, okay, let's look at the price of bread. Now, the price of bread, it's not going to like spike one day. It's not going to go from like, $1. It's like $2 a loaf to like $7 a loaf. It's not going to do that. What it might do is it might go from like 2 to 225 and be like, okay, we're going to calculate that inflation over the course of a year. That's the CPI. And we're going to look at that all across the country. We're not going to look in Greensboro. We're not going to look in just North Carolina. We're going to look at the entire country as a whole and do like the calculation of all average prices to see if they're going to rise. Because we all know that we can't not have inflation. Inflation is something that's always going to happen. Why? Because our population is growing. The more people that we have, the more resources we're going to be using, the more I lost my train of thought. The more resources we use, the more expensive it is. That's the problem with economics. That's scarcity, okay? That's something we obviously have talked about a lot. The whole reason why things cost money is because they're scarce. Anything from water to, sweet tea to chicken to bacon to cars, okay? So that is consumer price index. I believe the other question of that was government regulation. Great question. Why does the government come in and ruin everything about the businesses? Well, that's easy because unfortunately we need the government to protect us. Why? Because we are just mere mortals and businesses are like evil people trying to steal our money. It's our money. But here's the thing. If businesses could, they could jack up the prices of everything and we would be broke and they would be rich and they would exploit us. So what does the government do? The government comes in and kind of like acts as like the protective dad, making sure, or the protective mom, you never know, protective parent, that one's better. So let's say that they're a protective parent and they're going to protect us from making bad choices with businesses. Their main jobs, the two main jobs of government regulation are to protect consumers and to make sure that there's competition, because we all know that competition does what to prices. I heard you all from your homes. You said they went down. Great job. Okay. Competition brings prices down, down, down. Okay. As a flow rider would say, it's going down for real. That just felt weird saying. Okay. So we're going to go away from that question. Let's look at Gmail. I think I saw a couple of Gmail accounts. Oh, hi Sawyer. Yes, I know. I know I'm weird. You don't have to tell me I'm weird. I know. Okay. Let's go over types of unemployment. We had that question asked a while ago, so we're going to ask that. Unemployment. There are 5 types of unemployment. Let's just roll through them right now. The easiest one, seasonal. You're Santa Claus in July. You're a lifeguard in December. You're a teacher in the summer. Hey, we work hard. We are not seasonal. We're a little bit seasonal. Okay, so it's basically having one job in one season and not the other. That's pretty easy to understand. Next is frictional, and frictional is pretty easy. Frictional is just, let's say that, let's use me as an example again. When I left my job as being a substitute teacher in New York, I then got my job in, at Northern Guilford. So from that time of like a week, I was frictionally unemployed. I didn't have a job for like a week. It didn't mean that I was unemployed, so to speak. I didn't have a job for that part. The third one, structural. This one is kind of hard to understand. I've always thought of a way of kind of explaining this easier, and all I can really think about is just, structures. What builds structures? Machines. And machines take jobs from people. I think of like the Terminator. Machines are coming to kill us all. This is a very dark live stream, a lot of death. But think of the machines taking our jobs. They took our jobs, okay? Think about cars. It's really hard to build a car with our bare hands and tools, so we let machines do it. So we don't need to be hired. They just basically keep one of us around to clean the machines, make sure that they're running properly. Okay, so that's structural unemployment, when you lose your job to like a machine. Then we have cyclical unemployment, which is probably the worst one. Cyclical unemployment means that the economy is in a recession, real GDP is going down, unemployment is going up. So with the economy going down and unemployment going up, more people are losing their jobs. That's the worst and hardest one to recover from. And then we need to talk about underemployment. Let's use Mr. C as an example. If I were to work at a fine establishment like Bojangles, I have a master's degree in education. It would not be good if I was working at Bo's, because the problem is I'm way too qualified to work there. Okay, that's like a really, really, really big problem that we have today. People go to college, they get degrees in like psychology or communications, or even something like history, and they just aren't getting jobs. Why? Because there aren't a lot of jobs out there for that sort of stuff. So they're way overqualified to work at places like McDonald's or Burger King or Best Buy or American Eagle, but they have to take the job or they're going to be broke and they can't pay back their bills. So that's the 5 types of unemployment. Remember, unemployment levels should be no more than 4 to 6%, no less than 4, no more than 6. We should never have full employment. Why? Because then you can't move jobs. If you get fired, they have to rehire you because everybody else has a job. Okay? All right, let's look at, we got a lot of emails. Jacob, my jokes are hilarious. You just stop that. Ms. Mercer, I believe I talked about CPI. If you didn't hear me, that's what CPI is, the way of measuring inflation. So hopefully you got to hear that. If not, CPI, once again, just talks about measuring inflation. Okay, Miss Kayla, why do first world countries trade and the trade barriers and this? Okay, so first of all, first and second world countries do trade with third world countries. Remember, there's only 3 world countries. First world countries, America. Second world countries like Ukraine, Poland. These are countries that are doing okay. It's like you get an A for effort. You're doing all right. You're not doing great, but you're doing okay. And then you have third world countries like Mexico, Sudan, Chad, Brazil, places that are like not okay places to live. So yeah, there's only 3 world countries. Generally, there are trade barriers on some of those countries. Like think of North Korea, man, that place is a dump. Third world country for sure. Nobody trades with them except like Sweden and China, maybe China. Basically, they have, because of all the embargoes, the high barriers to trade, they're not able to bring in a lot of goods. Think of The Interview, like, they have all those fake stores where they pretend like things are okay, and they're really not. They're not okay. It's not okay to live there. So I hope that answers your question. It's not that they're not developed enough. They have stuff. I mean, Sudan has a lot of oil. Venezuela has a lot of oil. They could trade and make money, but sometimes there's just nothing there. We're lucky that we live in the United States where we have a lot of stuff to trade. We have a lot of farmland, so we make a lot of crops. We have a lot of skilled people living here, so we have engineers, we have doctors, we have people that can go somewhere and make a lot of money doing that. We have a lot of people that are smart to make medicine. It's not saying that people aren't smart in third world countries. There's plenty of smart people there. There's just not a lot of resources. Look at Peru. I mean, Peru, it's mainly food that they export, like bananas. I love bananas, but bananas aren't going to make you rich when they're 49 cents a pound. So, all right, let's go back to, I have a lot of comments. I think we've answered all that. Let's see, let's go back to, let's see. People are sharing my videos, that's good. Bruh, I'm about to go off if you don't answer these questions. Bruh, I'm answering as many questions as I can possibly answer. All right, a lot of people here. So let me see what your questions are. Who thumbs down this? I am doing this for your benefit, people. Jeez, everyone's a hater. I talked about CPI already. We talked about fiscal policy. I think we talked about tight and loose fiscal policy. We definitely talked about monetary fiscal policy. We talked about deficit. We talked about barriers to trade. We talked about tight and loose fiscal policy. We talked about comparative advantage. We definitely talked about collusion and cartel. How did you hear me from my house? I always know. North Carolina economy. Hello, Ethan. I just got your question. Let's talk about that. Okay, so North Carolina economy, the great state of North Carolina. Now, as we talked about today, our biggest thing that we do in North Carolina is tobacco. We grow a crap load of tobacco. For some reason, people still think that smoking cigarettes is like a great idea. Until it doesn't kill you or anything. So we make a lot of tobacco. And where do we grow it? Well, there's this crazy place called Tobacco Road. It's not actually a tobacco road, but it's just a pretend road that runs from Durham down to Chapel Hill and over to Raleigh. And what it does is in that triangle area, that's where the most tobacco grows. And we sell that tobacco to other states. We sell that tobacco to other countries, most notably China, because they have like 4-year-olds that like to smoke cigarettes. So that's cool. Get them hooked early. All right. Let's talk about what else? Oh, piggies. We have lots of hogs. We're like the 3rd biggest state in the country that does hogs. That's awesome. We make a lot. Well, we don't make hogs. It's not like we go to a factory and like put in a formula and pigs come out. We have hog farms, and we're the 3rd biggest state to do it. We're actually the 3rd biggest country to do it as well, second to China and I think Canada. For some reason, there's a lot of pigs in Canada. Well, technically, you know what? Canadian bacon is really good. Not like the ham stuff. Like the actual Canadian bacon is like really good. So no doubt that they're up there. Other than that, we used to have really good textiles, but due to child labor in China and Central American countries, that went down. Remember, if you check your tags on your shirt, let's see. Ooh, I was made in Indonesia. Well, not me, my shirt. This shirt, made by American Eagle, was made in Indonesia, and that's the reason why textiles aren't made in North Carolina anymore. Just not profitable enough anymore. They're too expensive. Okay. Other than that, film industry is also pretty big. We've had a lot of movies filmed here, but don't really have to know that. Just know tobacco, know your furniture, know your hogs, and know that we used to be good at textiles. All right. I think I see more email questions. Ooh. Okay. I will go over. I see a question from Brooke. Brooke, hello. Let me go over financial institutions. So, and this actually will get into a question I saw earlier about the banking timeline. I think that was Michaela. I will get to that. It'll be one fell swoop. So, first things first. Financial institutions. These are places where money is handled. Their finance usually equate to money, and with money, we got to know that money it's really important. It's crucial to the, they say money isn't everything, but really it is, because if we don't have money, we're just going to fall along the wayside. There are 3 places that deal with our money. Commercial banks, Bank of America, and then there's something called the Savings and Loan Institute. Those aren't really that important anymore. They used to like give mortgages to people's homes, but now you can go on like lendingtree.com and get a loan from somebody. So I mean, they're not really used anymore. Just no commercial banks and no credit unions. If you're like me and you work for the state, you're a member of State Employees Credit Union. Some of your parents might be members of State Employees Credit Union. And the difference between a commercial bank and a credit union is 2 things. Number 1, commercial banks are always for profit. They are trying to steal your money. They love that. They will charge per month fees if you don't have enough money in your credit or your checking account. And they're going to hit you with high interest rates for credit cards. They're just going to be they're going to nitpick you. They're going to nickel and dime you. Then we have your credit union. Credit unions are not for profit. They are not trying to take your money. They're just like, yo, you want a credit card? 2% interest rate. All right. So you don't have to think about that you're getting cheated out of your money at a credit union. You're definitely going to get your money cheated out of at a commercial bank. The only thing is you're paying for the ability to go to a commercial bank anywhere. Think of Bank of America. You can go anywhere, not only in the United States, but you can go into other countries in Bank of America. Like I went to England, Bank of America. Go to Germany, Bank of America. They're there. It's crazy. Like they're everywhere. And so that's one of the benefits of having a commercial bank. If I'm trying to go to State Employees Credit Union, I can't go to any other State Employees Credit Union place besides the ones in North Carolina. It's just the way it is. All right. So let's go into the banking timeline. The dates you really need to know, and we keep getting this confused on the quizzes or on the game today. All right, Woodrow Wilson and Abraham Lincoln. They weren't even close into being presidents. Let me count the amount of presidents that were between the two. Johnson, Grant, Hayes, Arthur, Garfield, Cleveland. Who's the guy between those two? Cleveland, Harrison, Cleveland, McKinley, Roosevelt, Taft. That was 11 presidents in between the two. 11 presidents in between the two. They weren't even close to being in the same age. Abraham Lincoln, 1863, National Banking Act. One uniform money, dollar bills for the first time, dollar bills, y'all. Okay, the money was being controlled by the government. The federal government was controlling the money. It used to be just a state thing, and that was bad because we had like 30,000 currencies. Then think about Woodrow Wilson, 1913. Okay, just before World War I, Woodrow Wilson made the Federal Reserve Act, which created the Federal Reserve, which controls our money supply. Woodrow Wilson, Federal Reserve Act, 1913. Lincoln had been dead for like 40 years. He was a dead corpse by that time. Head was blown in from John Wilkes Booth. Okay, he wasn't around. Okay, Lincoln died in 1865. He passed the National Banking Act in 1863. 1863, Abraham Lincoln National Banking Act, one uniform money. 1913, Woodrow Wilson, Federal Reserve Act, creates the Fed. All right, give me like a minute. I have to go get something to drink. My voice is like all raspy. Okay. For all of you out there, don't worry. It's just a Mountain Dew Baja Blast. So I know you gamers would approve. All right. Yeah, tastes all right. Let's see what other questions we have. I believe I saw one from Miss Hannah Lee. Hannah, I already talked about, I think I talked about comparative and absolute advantage. Hi, Abby Bear. I have to say hi to you before you hurt me. I'm fearing for my life. Okay, let's talk about trade organizations. The three main trade organizations that we need to talk about: NAFTA and, excuse me, I almost said NATO, that's not a trade organization. NAFTA, World Trade Organization, and then finally the European Union. So let's take a look at the three so that we don't get confused. Okay. NAFTA. Okay, let me share my screen right quick. Oh, no, that's not what I want. That would be like some inception action going on. We don't want that. Oh, bother. Screen share. That's what I want. Okay. For everybody besides Miss Bear that are wanting me to talk to them about the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade. Sorry, let me try that again. North American Free Trade Agreement. NA, North American Free Trade FT Agreement. A. United States, Stars and Stripes. Mexico, eagle eating a snake. And then Canada, the greatest flag ever. It's a freaking leaf, baby. It's a leaf. They love it. Basically, what it does is it, in the 1990s, I think it was 94 during President Clinton's presidency, he was actually able to create a no barriers to trade, free trade agreement between these three countries. Some people argue that it was good. Others argue that it was bad. This is not here nor there. All you have to know is that it was a free trade agreement, meaning that there were no barriers, no quotas, no limits, no tariffs, no taxes. So we could bring in a bunch of Mexican goods and not have any tariffs on them. Same thing with Canadian goods. So that means all the maple syrup in the world. God, I love maple syrup. Who doesn't, though? All right, let us look at the EU. That's European countries. I need the EU. All right, European Union. Come on now. Internet is slow. Internet is killing me. You just don't want to go anywhere. All right. View image. Okay, let's go back to stop sharing. All right, so we're back. Hello. Let me scare you. I'm going to screen share again real quick so that you can see it. All right, let's go with my entire screen. Hello, and there's all the inception going on. Boom. Here is the European Union. Here's the flag. This is what the flag looks like. The European Union is just a group of all these European countries together. There are no, barriers to trade. There are no, there's no barriers to trade. It's like NAFTA, like the free trade agreement between us and Canada and Mexico. But like for all the countries of Europe, minus like 5, minus like Iceland, Norway, Switzerland, Albania. That sounds right. Anyways, just know Switzerland and Iceland because they're different. Okay, basically free trade. They can do whatever they pretty much want. They can sell as much as they want as long as they're members of the EU. Now, the other cool thing is that the other thing is that they have a common currency for most of the countries. Not all of them, most. It's called the euro, and the euro is a currency that you can use in countries like, let's say, Ireland. If you go to Ireland and then you decide to take a holiday in France, you can use an Irish euro in France. Okay? All right. So let's go to another question. I think I saw Zandra and Chloe. Hello, guys and girls. I see your question, but don't worry. I already answered it just now. So let's go to, let's take a look back, see if we have any other emails. I don't believe we do. Good. Let's go back to YouTube. Any comments on the YouTube? Hi, Rachel Graham. I see you. Jay Wills, I believe I think I talked about that one. I believe I talked about the excise taxing. Just remember, it's about taxing like cigarettes and alcohol and gambling. Shelby, we don't need to know about deregulation. And hi, Tess. Hello. No, we don't need to know about deregulation. Deregulation is just when the government stops regulating a certain product, but you don't really need to know that. Let me see. We still have 41 people. This is incredible. I was like figuring you guys would be like gone by now. Let me see. Let's see if the questions are still as similar as they are. Because if they are, I'm not gonna keep repeating myself. You guys could just like watch this whole video again. All right. Listen, Riley, I am doing the best I can to keep up. I am one person, okay? I have one computer. So, and you better be saying you're drinking Mountain Dew Baja Blast shots, not anything else. You crazy sophomore. All right. Looks like that is all there. Okay. I said do. So I fed into your thing. All right. I think that's all the questions on Twitter. Let me go back to Google because you guys are animals and can't pick the right thing to be on. Let's see. Can you name all the topics of the test? No, I can't. All right. No, Jacob, I'm not going to talk about the PC Master Race because it's not a thing and Macs are better. No, Abby, I did not just get asked to go to prom. Thank you. Oh my God. Harrison, that is the worst. Harrison Church, you and I are going to have a talk though, buddy. All right. Talked about mergers. Types of taxes we already talked about. I think. Yes, I am raging about a hater. Thank you, Alex. All right. Let me see. I think that is about it. I don't think there's any other questions that I can answer. So let's go through it again. Topics from the top, okay? First things first, you're gonna have to know all the market structures. Oligopoly, perfect competition, monopolistic competition, and monopoly. And then of course the natural monopoly, which is like that, the evil, well, not the evil twin, but like a twin brother. That's like much better. Okay, and then we have opposite of market structures, we have types of unemployment and types of inflation. Actually, let me go get the sheet. I'll be right back. Okay, so you need to know the business cycle. You need to know all four phases. You need to know the expansion and recessions, the troughs and the peaks. You have to know those. You have to know the economic indicators. You need to know inflation. You need to know GDP and real GDP. You need to know the stock market, the bull and bear market. Remember, bull's horns go up, meaning that the economies go down. And when you get eaten by a bear, it goes down to the ground. Unemployment, structural, frictional, underemployment, cyclical, and seasonal. You need to know inflation. You need to know demand pull, cost push, and you need to know quantity theory, which has that also twin brother hyperinflation. Banking timeline. You need to know those important dates that I said. 1863, Abe Lincoln, National Banking Act. You need to know 1913, Woodrow Wilson, Federal Reserve Act. You need to know what the Federal Reserve does. You need to know that the Federal Reserve is, the board of directors, the five, because two of them haven't been nominated. You have to talk about the board of directors. 5 people on the board of directors right now. You have to talk about the Federal Open Markets Committee, the FOMC, and then finally the 12 reserve banks. You need to know that there are 12, not 10, not 20, 12. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12. Yeah. Okay. The Fed controls the money supply and monetary policy. And speaking of monetary policy, you need to know the three tools of monetary policy: reserve requirement, discount rate, and of course, open market operations, the buying and selling of bonds. You need to know fiscal policy, which is the government. They're controlling the money supply through taxes and government spending. And you need to know what type of spending we're talking about. Taxes are, spending. If we're talking about spending, what they're spending money on, a lot of it's military spending, a lot of it, spending on like Social Security. That's what we call mandatory spending. If we're spending money on, like on the defense, that has to be renewed every year. That's called discretionary. So that's actually something I don't think we talked about in class. It's probably my fault, but we can do it right now, and I'll mention tomorrow in class. Mandatory spending. These are things that don't need to be renewed by Congress. This is something that we spend money on that we don't renew, like Social Security. Social Security was created in the 30s, and we have not had to vote on every year. We just kind of say it's mandatory. We have to spend money on Social Security. We have to make sure old people or above the age of 65 get a paycheck every month. Okay, so that's Social Security. That's mandatory spending. We then have discretionary spending. Discretionary spending is something that does have to be approved. That's defense. That's education. Education spending. That doesn't happen. Education spending. That's infrastructure spending. Okay, those are things that we have to approve every year. Okay, we talked about trade. We talked about comparative versus absolute advantage. Comparative advantage. Does your country have a greater opportunity cost, or has the better opportunity cost of producing something? Absolute advantage. Is your country able to make the most of something? Okay. Trade barriers, tariff, quota, embargo, sanction. Trade organizations, World Trade Organization. We talked about EU. Okay. NAFTA. You got to talk about them as a way of promoting free trade. You could say like the United Nations and NATO, but they're more like peacekeeping organizations that promote trade. They're not really into the whole trading thing. That's more of like WTO. I think I just said comparative and absolute advantage, Miss Hannah. So if you just go ahead and watch the video or listen a little bit harder and check your notes, they're on there. Okay. And then finally, North Carolina economy. Hogs, film and television, textiles, furniture, and the best and also worst, tobacco. I think I saw some other questions here. I think Will Stansel's freaking out right now. So let's see what he wants. Bruh, answer my question, my dude. Bro, I'm not your bro. All right. One of the videos was talking about percentages. Was like was expected in and out of things like third world countries in the first world example. Okay, Will, I know what you're talking about. Don't worry about that. I would never ask you a specific question of how much countries trade with each other. Just know that first world countries trade with each other. Like we trade with other first and second world countries more than we trade with third world countries. Why? Because they offer us more. Okay, they offer us more products. They offer us more differentiation. That's why we trade more with them. We don't really trade so much with countries that only offer us like one finite good, like bananas. We can get bananas from a bunch of different countries. It's not like Peru makes the only bananas. We can get them from like Costa Rica. We can get them from like El Salvador. We can get it from Chile. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. That's why we trade with them. So I hope that answers your question. All right, let's go back to. We got like 17 minutes left. So let's see if I can go back to the thing. What is the airspeed velocity of a laden swallow? I believe for that question you need to ask if is it European or is it a African swallow, Mr. Eater, because that's the real thing that matters. We need to know what type of swallow it is before we talk about the airspeed velocity. And for all the kids that are wondering, that's something called Monty Python in the Holy Grail. So. All right, let us continue. Let's look at those questions. All right, I think that's it for the email. Let's go back to the Gmail. So many mailboxes, so little time. Where's my Gmail account? Internet is awful. So slow. All right, I think we talked about everything. So, all right, I think I'm gonna end this thing 15 minutes early. To all of you who came to this Google Plus Hangout, I would expect some feedback tomorrow. I hope that this helped you. For those of you who are wondering, you can watch this video right now. After I end it, you can watch it again because maybe you missed something, or maybe you just like the sound of my voice. Which in that case, I pity you because my voice is pretty nasty and terrible. So if you could go ahead and, if you guys can go ahead and just watch it. So go ahead, watch it again if you need to. And then if you have any other questions, just go ahead and shoot me an email. All right, guys, hope you had a great night watching me talk because 58 minutes in class today was probably not worth it. So, toodles.